Man, so all the talk about Chris Ballard has really cultivated a lot of negativity and division amongst the Colts fan base, and more specifically, his inactivity when it comes to bringing in new talent during this free agency period. If we want, we could ignore the fact that we've spent sixth most out of any team in the NFL during free agency, but it's neither here nor there. I don't want to create any more division, and I don't want to get into an argument about that. It's not my point. I want to move the conversation forward. That's always what I'm trying to do over here, is move the conversation about the Indianapolis Colts forward and put aside for a second whether or not you agree with Chris Ballard's strategy, because Stephen Holder put out a tweet, which I'm sure many of you saw, and I kind of want to speak about that a little bit and the implications of what he said. Let me just pull it up real fast to make sure I have the exact quote. So Stephen Holder says, last point is key. The single biggest reason the Colts have basically run it back with their roster is because they are convinced Richardson is a difference maker who can help them take a leap. That has come through in numerous conversations I've had in recent weeks. Now, I can't help myself, right? I find myself agreeing with this organization and Chris Ballard so often. I apologize for it, because I certainly am not trying to be like a company man or a yes man, but that is exactly what I saw. Exactly what Stephen Holder says the Colts think is exactly what I saw out of Anthony Richardson last season. And one of the things that makes Anthony Richardson so special is his work ethic, of course, right? We know that he works his ass off as if he isn't one of the most physically gifted guys to ever come through and play quarterback in the NFL, right? But the thing that makes him so special is the fact that he is a pocket passer. There's so much talk about running quarterbacks. And by the way, I'm glad if you want the receipt on what I'm about to say, by the way, go ahead, look up Anthony Richardson as a pocket passer on YouTube and see whose mug pops up first on that one. Okay. I was early on this. From the very second I saw him play in preseason, I said, not for anything. My goodness, this guy is incredibly committed to getting it done within the pocket. And with the way the league has changed over the course of the past, I don't know, however many years, 10 years, something like that, maybe a little bit less, basically since Cam Newton. Of course, Mike Vick was a bit of an outlier, but when Cam Newton really came around, it kind of seemed like the running quarterback wasn't just a novelty. It was like the way to go. But one thing a lot of people miss, and perhaps it's just because I've been watching the game so long, it's so clear and obvious to me, there's a distinction between a quarterback that is able to run and a running quarterback. And make no mistake, running quarterbacks are not the future of the NFL. Quarterbacks that are able to run are. You're going to need a guy that has the ability to run, but a quarterback at his finest wants to throw the ball first and run second. Even Jalen Hurts and everything we saw out of him, he became a passer from the pocket. That's kind of what really made Jalen Hurts take it to the next level. You look at a Patrick Mahomes, a Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert. These guys all have the ability to run, even a Josh Allen, him as well. The ability to run, and hell, they'll do it if they have to, if they feel it is necessary. But ultimately, they're going to try to get it done first. If you were to put it in basketball terms, right, you want your point guard to facilitate. If not, you kind of have a shooting guard on your hands. And not that there's anything wrong with that per se, but when you're talking about getting everyone involved, when you have a guy that's trying to get it done himself all the time, there is a level where that kind of limits what you can do as an offense. You kind of become a one-trick pony. And I hate to bring Lamar into this because he's spectacular, but at the same time, you look at the way that the Ravens can't get over the hump. I think part of it is because those wrinkles are not there when it comes to their offense. I think if you're able to stop Lamar Jackson from running, ultimately, you're kind of able to stop the Baltimore Ravens, and it becomes a little bit easier to do as you get into the postseason where guys can play a little bit more. There is no next game to prepare for, right? And one of the things that separates Anthony from Lamar is that very fact, the fact that he wants to be a pocket passer. Anthony Richardson is a more natural thrower of the football than a Lamar Jackson, may I say. And a thrower of the football is not the same thing as a guy who has a big arm. I know I'm kind of making these I don't, what's the word for that? Like, I'm kind of like these semantics here, right? I'm kind of making these like little tiny degrees of separation, but they matter, right? Anthony Richardson is effortless in the way he throws the football. He looks like he was born to be a quarterback. Lamar Jackson, on the other hand, despite the fact that he can sling it, it doesn't come out of his hand the same way it does Anthony Richardson. And if you've never observed that before, I encourage you to go do it. Maybe not so much now, but you look at where Lamar was when he was a rookie and where Anthony Richardson was as a rookie as a passer, and you just marvel at the potential upside that Anthony Richardson brings to the table. And Steichen had some media availability recently, about a half hour's worth, may I add. And he was asked about that fine line between protecting Anthony Richardson and kind of letting him play and where that falls. And he gave the typical answer that you would expect, right? That injuries happen. And as an offense, we got to make plays. Sometimes that means Anthony Richardson is going to be running the football. And I'm paraphrasing, of course, but that was the gist. If you didn't watch the media availability, that's basically exactly what he said. And I do wish, I don't know who asked the question, and this is why sometimes I wish I was the guy asking the questions, right? I do wish they had been just a little bit more specific, because I was waiting in all that 30 minutes. I was waiting for someone to ask something along the lines of this. Like, I wish they'd ask something like, when you think about the way that you used Anthony Richardson last year and the way it all went down, is there anything you'd anticipate looking different in the way you deploy his skill set this upcoming season? Because someone had mentioned the fact that Anthony is a pocket passer during that media availability, and Shane Steichen lit up. He cannot be any happier that people were noticing the fact that this guy is more than just a running quarterback. And you wonder, if he's so excited about that prospect, why not just lean into it a little bit more if you're Shane Steichen, right? If you ask me. Now, I love the idea of doing these kind of goal line, Cam Newton style running plays, right? You're like 3rd and 3 at the 3-yard line, or 3rd and goal from the 3-yard line, and you kind of have him just do like a QB power play up the middle. I love all of that, but do we really need to see design QB sweeps at 1st and 10 from the 50-yard line? Like, is that type of stuff necessary, right? If Anthony is so committed to being a passer in this league, which he is, why not just let him do it, right? Because Lord knows he is a football player and an absolute dog, right? If you let him run and you tell him to do it, he can't help himself. Those are his instincts. He's going to take those hits. It's how he's wired. Like, even Superman had his kryptonite, right? And he said in his postseason press conference, now I'm going to Anthony Richardson, a little all over the place here, but someone had asked him if they felt, or he felt, he needed to adjust the way he played the game. And essentially what he said was, no, the way I play the game is what got me here. It's why the organization drafted me, and I don't plan to change the way I'm playing at all. And then he kind of underneath that said something along the lines of, yeah, I could probably protect myself a little bit better. But the overarching point was the fact he's like, no, I ain't got to change. And not for anything. I listen, I love AR, but sir, that's not what we want to hear, right? We as Colts fans, we've suffered when it comes to the injury at the quarterback position. We can't take any more of it. I don't want to hear you say that you don't plan to change anything after you took hit after hit after hit and ended up with a season-ending injury. It's the last thing I want to hear as a Colts fan, and I just hope that they, and really more specifically Shane Steichen, take the measures necessary to protect Anthony Richardson from himself to the best of their ability. I know it's not going to be a foolproof method, but man, I hope they lean into that passing ability of his, because he really, really is special. I think he really has some special upside. Is that, I mean, I feel like some of you guys are taking for granted what we have here. Again, enormous upside that he showed signs of early. Remember what the narrative was about Anthony Richardson coming out of the draft, is that he was supposed to be a project. This, that, and the next. I showed up to training camp. Those of you who don't know, I'm out here in Long Island, New York. I flew 800 miles to watch Colts training camp for the first time just to see this kid. It freaking went like 11 or 12 and had like 3 touchdowns and a rushing. It was spectacular. I mean, I had never been to a training camp before, so I had nothing to refer to. But I was looking at him, and again, he was just standing in the pocket and getting it done, the poise. And I just sat and looked and said, listen, I don't know if everyone looks this good in training camp, but he's special. And then I came to you guys and I said, the Colts are keeping a secret here, guys, because this kid is way better than everyone is giving him credit for. And I thought he proved it right away. And between him and Shane Steichen, there's just so much to be excited about as a Colts fan, particularly when it comes to the offensive side of the football. And I just want to kind of focus a bit more on that as the offseason continues. Of course, we'll cover what's going on and stuff, but I don't want everyone to lose sight of the fact that that was a very fun season that we just watched and somewhat unexpected. Now, sure, 9-8, whatever, but I want to give you guys 3 reasons that you should feel good about the Colts headed into this upcoming season. But before we do it, you know what it is. I got to introduce myself. My name is Justin. This right here is the Riding the Bench Colts podcast. As always, ask anyone enjoying the show, go ahead, shoot it a like. It's going to help me get out to as many Colts fans as humanly possible. If you keep coming back, enjoying the content, we are right at the precipice of hitting 2,200 subscribers over here on YouTube. We want to be at 3,000 subscribers by the time next season starts. We're nowhere close, but let's blow past 2,200 and then get over to 2,300 and then just take it 100 subs at a time. And most importantly, let's enjoy the episode. Let's keep the comment section civil, and let's maybe change the topic from Chris Ballard for just a moment, right? So now on to the reasons. Reason number one that you should be optimistic about the Colts going into this season. Last time we saw Anthony Richardson against CJ Stroud, he was up 14-0 in the first 6 minutes of the football game. And then the Colts, after Anthony got hurt with the concussion, if you remember in the end zone, kind of like a whoop, right? Just kind of smacked the back of his head. You got to tuck your chin, young blood, right? But the Colts went on to rout the Texans that day. And a lot of people talking very highly on in fact, a lot of people saying, oh, that was a different Texans team, blah, blah, blah. Well, yeah, it was a different Colts team too. You don't think the Colts got better as the season went on? They both did, right? And the Texans got very similar results as the Colts did last year with CJ Stroud as the quarterback for, I believe, all the season. He might have missed like a game or two. I believe he got a concussion somewhere in there. But even without Anthony Richardson, the Colts brought the Texans to the wire at the end of the year. And then there's all this talk now about the Texans and how great they've done this offseason. And I'll tell you what, they have, okay? I'm not going to sit here and try to dismiss that. But you'd start to think that some of you guys were Texans fans. I mean, did you ever think, and no, I'm not just saying this to say it, did you ever think for a moment that the Texans were so aggressive because they saw what that young man, Anthony Richardson, was able to do to them, huh? Did you ever consider the fact that perhaps the whole division is so aggressive, obviously because they see each other, but the Texans perhaps might be worried about the Indianapolis Colts? They might actually have more respect for the Indianapolis Colts than you guys do. Did you ever consider that at all? Okay, so that is one reason right there that I think we should be optimistic. As it currently stands, Anthony Richardson is 1-0 against CJ Stroud. And I'm not saying that that's how it's always going to be, but what I am saying is let's not forget how special the cat is, okay? Number two, the Colts were one of the top 10 scoring teams in the NFL last season with Gardner Minshew at quarterback for most of the season, and really without JT for a good amount of it, and without JT at his best for practically all of it, okay? And when you look at where they were earlier in the season, and there was a good portion where they were in the top 5 of the league as a scoring offense, and you look at the fact that now you get a full off season with Anthony Richardson, right? And Shane was so cool to mention because he had mentioned the fact, someone had asked something along the lines of like, is Anthony, is there a benefit to him kind of being in here now, having a full OTA process, all of that stuff, whatever it is. And Shane, I'm glad he pointed out how important it is to just get used to being in a huddle. Like, people take for granted the little things in this league. And I say this as someone who is a quarterback in a flag football league. We got 30 seconds from the moment the pass is completed to like calling the play and being at the line. And the huddle is arguably like the most important part, to just be in command of that huddle, to be able to call the play and to be confident in it is something in of itself. Okay. And I'm glad Shane pointed that out. And you think about the fact that Anthony was able to kind of sit back and watch, which is absolutely beneficial. You can also learn from that. You learn from playing, yes, but you can also learn from watching and seeing someone else get it done. You think about that. You think about Pittman. You think about a healthy Jonathan Taylor. You think about Josh Downs presumably taking a leap in his second year. And then you think about the offensive genius that is Shane Steichen, the possibility and the likelihood that we add another young stud at wide receiver in this draft. And you look at what this, or Lord forbid, Brock Bowers at number 15, if he were to be there, right? And you just think about the possibilities of where this offense can go. And it's hard to not be excited about the prospect of this offense with Anthony Richardson. And then that goes to reason number 3, and perhaps most importantly, the most underappreciated group of guys in football, the Colts offensive line. By the end of the season, were PFF's 3rd-ranked offensive line in the NFL, and they kept that entire unit around. And what did I say coming into the season? Everyone was worried about the offensive line. I said the offense, and I would love, some of you guys that have been here, know kind of where I was at preseason and kind of how a lot of it transpired. And I hate to give myself the pat on the back, but I was right about a lot of stuff coming into this season. It is what it is. And one of the things I had mentioned on the offensive line was how important the continuity was. A lot of people were worried about their production. I said, I'm not worried at all. In the second half of the 2022 season, they had really picked it up. And I just thought they were going to pick up where they left off going into this season. They absolutely did. Bernard Raymond, top 5 left tackle per PFF in the NFL. That's perhaps the most important position on the offensive line in its entirety, particularly when your quarterback is right-handed. You got the blind side. That's where he can't see, right? If you're standing here, you got someone coming from behind you. You need to make sure that that left tackle is locking it down. Bernard Raymond is doing exactly that. No big deal. Chris Ballard draft pick, neither here nor there, right? And 15 sacks allowed by this offensive line, despite the fact that the total say 41. That was also the third best or least in football. 15 sacks, only 2 teams allowed less sacks than that, right? And I believe, by the way, when you look at sacks on the offensive line side and like sacks total, like sacks allowed, I believe the distinction that would be getting made there, I'm not 100% sure on this, but I'm pretty sure, is that they're using some sort of advanced analytic to determine how many of those were on the offensive line in terms of the sacks. The Colts, 15 of their 41 sacks were attributed to the offensive line. I think a lot of us would understand that when we talk about kind of what we saw out of Gardner Minshew in terms of kind of his, I don't know, like his happy feet in the pocket, kind of how he was quick to panic a little bit and to scramble a little bit when perhaps there was a little bit more time there than he thought there was, right? Now, these are the things that we should be positive about as Colts fans. There's a lot to be excited about. This is another season. We'll see as it gets closer, but right now, I'm feeling quite all right about the Indianapolis Colts. I'm going to be 100% honest with you. It doesn't mean there's not still work to do. Ballard himself said they've got work to do in the secondary. He mentioned the idea of a veteran safety. We'll see exactly who that is. I saw Kareem Jackson visited. That's not quite what I want to hear. But at the same time, he's been a good player in this league for a very, very long time. Obviously, we're more interested in a Quandre Diggs, a Justin Simmons, a re-sign of Julian Blackmon. All of these things, we'll see where that goes. But I'd like you guys to be a little bit more positive here. That's really the point, and I'm hoping this episode brings that a little bit. There's plenty to be excited about as a Colts fan, but for now, that is all I got. So until next time, my name is Justin. This right here was the Ride on the Bench Colts podcast, and as always, go Colts.